This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a nonprofit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode number 95.
Don't be scared. All of this is new to you and new can be scary. When people need help, I never refuse. There's this moment when you're sure you're about to die, and then you're born. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And right now we're talking about the new Doctor Who season. Finally, very happy. Yay! Today we're discussing the second episode of the new season called Ghost Monument. And I want to call it right off the top that Jimmy was right. But first, joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
We'll get into how Jimmy was right in a minute. But first, I want to take a minute at the top of the show to give you a message about so if you asking for your support for SQPN and for our efforts at creating this podcast and bringing this podcast to you. We are starting a giving campaign in which we turn to you, the listeners, to help support what we do in our efforts at creating not just this podcast, but all the podcasts that SQPN produces. Jimmy, do you got a couple words for the listeners on that?
Yeah, so for people who may not be aware, StarQuest is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to kind of explore the intersection of faith and geek culture. And it's right there in our title, StarQuest. It's based on the Bethlehem star that led the wise men to Jesus. And so we want to, using Christian and Catholic faith to engage pop culture and help bring people closer to God. And we need your help to do that. We made a decision a while back at StarQuest. The board made a decision to expand our efforts. We were at a point where we could have kind of limped along doing maybe one podcast, but that wouldn't help us fulfill our mission of reaching people. We wanted to do more than that. We wanted to be effective with our mission. And that meant we needed to hire someone who happened to be Dom to work full time on producing a whole range of podcasts that we're now rolling out. Things like Secrets of Star Trek, Jimmy Aiken's Mysterious World, the revived Let's Talk, and others as well. And in order to produce those, we needed someone working on them full time. We also needed to be able to pay, hosting fees and things like that, computer equipment, software, all the different things that go into producing quality podcasting. And we correspondingly need your help. We haven't run a giving campaign like this in 2 years, and our funds are nearing depletion. And so now is really when we need to hear from you. If we don't, then it'll have significant implications for the future of StarQuest and the shows that you love listening to. If you want to hear those keep going, we really need to hear from you. The way to help is by going to sqpn.com/give. Once again, that's sqpn.com/give, and signing up to support us through Patreon. We have a series of different gifts that we'd like to send you as thank yous, depending on the amount of support you're able to provide the program. We have some that are specially themed for fans of Doctor Who, and I was involved in picking these out. They're things that I think you'll really like. Two of them are the respective parts 1 and 2 of Space Helmet for a Cow, which is a history of the Doctor Who program. Volume 1 covers the classic series. Volume 2 covers the revived series. The subtitle of Space Helmet for a Cow is The Mad True Story of Doctor Who, and it is a mad and true story. It's a lot of fun to read. It's written very humorously, but it also conveys a lot of inside, kind of behind the scenes facts that you wouldn't know about the producers of the show and things that happen behind the scenes and the actors who've played the Doctor and the companions. Both volumes are a lot of fun to read. I've read them. They're hilarious. But they also give you that insider's behind the scenes look on the show. I've recommended them, in fact, to Dom and Father Corey as reading material for information to bring out here on the podcast, because they're just that informative and that much fun. Also, we have an in-universe guide for you. It's the Time Lord's equivalent of A Brief History of Time. So it's the history of the universe from the Time Lord's perspective, from some press on the planet Gallifrey, and that's a lot of fun to read as well. So based on your level of support, we'd love to send you all three of those, or whatever corresponds to the level you're able to afford. We also have thank you gifts themed for other shows, including Star Trek and Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. So the way to find out about those and to support SQPN at this time, which, as I said, is crucial that we hear from you, is to go to sqpn.com/give. Once again, that's sqpn.com/give. Since this is a podcast, you could pause it right now and go visit that link while you're thinking about it. Because I know if I don't do things when I'm thinking about them, they can fall through the cracks. And we really don't want that to happen here. So please go to sqpn.com/give today, and thank you so much for your support. It really helps us ensure the future of StarQuest.
Thank you, Jimmy. Don't pause it and do it while you're driving, though. Pull over to the side of the road.
Yeah, pause, pull over, give, and then get back on the road.
That's right. That's what I would be doing if I was listening on my commute.
It reminds me of when I was a kid watching Doctor Who on PBS, and they'd have their fun drives. Let's find out what's going to happen to the Doctor after we tell you about our new fun drive we're starting.
Yeah. Just be glad we didn't do this in the middle of the episode.
No cliffhanger today.
So that's over. We're not going to talk about it for the rest of this episode. We're going to talk about the second episode of this season of Doctor Who, Ghost Monument. As a quick recap, picking up from last time, the Doctor and her friends now, they're not companions, they're her friends.
Oh, they're companions and friends.
Well, we'll continue to call them companions because we're old school Doctor Who fans, and we're stuck with that. But that's what they're calling them now. Anyway, they're floating in space, and then they're picked up by two space rally racers and taken to a nearby planet that's called Desolation. The planet is a death trap, and they have to get across it, avoiding all the dangers, while proving that working together means survival. And they have to reach the finish line where the Ghost Monument stands, and the Ghost Monument is the TARDIS. As I said, Jimmy predicted it last time that it would be the
Seemed
TARDIS.
The obvious solution. It's what I would do if I was a writer. They need to get back to the TARDIS quickly, and since the TARDIS flickered out last we saw it, it made sense that it would be a ghostly monument flickering in and out of existence.
Right.
Now, I have to say that this episode felt very, very familiar.
Well,
they called it the Hunger Games.
Oh, I haven't seen those.
Well, yeah,
I've read the books, and there's a lot of elements that are very similar, including the joint winners of the rally.
Really?
That's one of the plots of the original Hunger Games. The first book is the two of them win when only one was supposed to.
Well, to be fair, I mean, Doctor Who has been doing this very sort of story, and as have a lot of other stories, long before the Hunger Games existed.
True.
It is a classic plot of we are stranded here and have to get through this dangerous place over there in order to escape. I mean, we saw this in the very first season of Doctor Who several times, I mean 1963 season. So
this is the very first story. I mean, the tribe of Gum with that caveman, they get captured, they have to make their way back to the TARDIS.
Exactly. So, I mean, to be fair, yes, in some ways, I always felt like the Hunger Games was copying a lot of other people.
That's true. That's true too. But it felt so much like just Hunger Games retold.
Yes and no, but yeah, okay.
There are only a certain number of plots. As J. M. Barrie said in the Cylon scriptures, the author of Peter Pan, all of this has happened before, all of this will happen again.
Exactly. So, but let's start from the very beginning of the episode, which is we actually get an opening this time.
Yeah.
There's a new opening. It's shorter. It returns to a simpler theme music. And it has no TARDIS and no face, no Doctor face.
Yep. And the patterns that they are showing are on the screen are very much reminiscent of the patterns that they would show during the time of the first and the second Doctors.
Yeah.
They're these surreal kaleidoscopic patterns. And this felt like just an updated version of that, where they're a little more three-dimensional.
Even the music was, it sounded like it was the original music, but as a remix, a little bit heavier bass, a little bit heavier drum line, but the same basic melody, the same basic song, recording.
I really liked it. I thought it was refreshing to see that. I think it's a nice callback for the longtime fans of the show. It's a way of signaling continuity, even with the early days of the show. And I like it better than some of the later and some of the more recent opening credits.
Right. Murray Gold had been the composer for all of the Return of New Who, and he redid the theme music I think 5 times in his tenure.
At least 4 times I can think of. Yeah,
I think I counted 5, and each time he started actually very simple, and each time it got more complex. And the first one was basically the original theme by an orchestra instead of electronic organ, and so, but it got more and more complex. And this is sort of a return to that. And I said last time that we didn't get much of the theme music, very much at all, but this we did, and I like it. I think it's a nice update and simplification of theme music. So I was happy with that. So the episode it's written again by Chris Chibnall, just like the first episode, and the next several episodes are also written by Chibnall. So he's rating basically the first 4 or 5 episodes, writing or co-writing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The first one we know of, we only have titles and synopses going out to I think the 6th episode, and I think that one is the episode's called The Demons of Punjab, and it's written by Vijay Patel. So that's the first one that Chibnall is not writing. Hey, he's the showrunner for the first time. He gets to write the first half a dozen episodes.
And this episode, because it starts right where the last episode left off, almost feels like it really is a 2-parter.
Yes.
And without explicitly saying it.
It'll be interesting to see if they keep that up, because that also is a hallmark of the original series. It began with every single week's episode leading directly into the next.
Right. A constant movement, continuation from one to the next. It was filmed on location in South Africa, which is, I think, the first time they filmed there.
I thought you were going to say it was filmed on location on Planet Desolation.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if any South Africans feel like their country is like a desolate planet sometimes, but it was filmed on location in South Africa. In the past, in New Who, they filmed on islands, and I was going to look it up. I forgot to look it up. Was it the Azores or the Canary Islands or both? I think where they filmed some like off-planet location shooting.
Yeah, like Lanzarote and places like that.
Like out, and they've also filmed in Spain, I think, a couple times.
Yep.
So as far as outside of Great Britain, yes, a few times in the U.S. So South Africa, I liked the location shooting. The locations were dramatic. I think they added to the atmosphere. Really, really good. So as far as
it wasn't a quarry, so that's a good thing.
Yes, not another quarry. So as far as the plot itself, we start off with yet another hallmark of Doctor Who. So there's two major kinds of dramatic ways that they build tension. TARDIS separation, where the Doctor is separated from the TARDIS, has to get back to it, which we've got, and then Doctor separation, where the Doctor and companion or companions are separated and have to get back together. Well, we start here with TARDIS separation, and then we go to Doctor separation, but very briefly. Graham and Ryan are separated.
Whereas the Doctor and Yaz are on a different spaceship that they've been scooped up on.
Yes. One thing I noticed about Graham throughout this episode is he seems very calm and capable in a crisis, whereas Ryan is often wide-eyed and out of sorts. I mean, he's young. He's like 19 or 20, so, it's understandable.
Yeah, this was something that I had in my notes. In this episode, Graham, now I didn't think that Graham came across as especially likable in the first episode.
No.
Yeah.
His wife, Grace, was the much more interesting, compelling character, and Graham was kind of a stick in the mud that really didn't come into his own until her funeral. But now he's come into his own, and in this episode, he's much nicer. He's much more likable. I don't think he's really, I mean, maybe he's still in the retroactive phase of denial about Grace's death, but emotionally, he's not grieving enough.
Right.
And, but Ryan, by contrast, comes across as much less likable in this episode. He's more immature. He's more juvenile. He's being rude to, his, however you want to say it, to his grandmother's husband. And so that plants some nice seeds for character drama. I'm glad that they gave us a nicer Graham in this episode. I think they still need to do more with Graham's grief. And I'm not as happy about what they did with Ryan, but I do recognize you need to start somewhere lower than where you're going to eventually go with these characters. So
well, it's interesting too. You kind of point that out because there was that scene where Graham is talking about Grace, and Ryan says, "Well, you talk too much about this." He goes, "Well, maybe I do. You don't talk about it at all or enough."
Right.
So it's kind of ironic. There's that where Ryan thought he was talking too much, but it may not even still been enough.
Well, certainly Graham doesn't look like he's grieving as much. I mean, there is apparently a separation of time. I mean, there had to have been a time period between when Grace died and the funeral, probably a week or so. So a little bit of time has passed.
And it took time for her to build the TARDIS finder that then took them all wherever they are. So could have been a month or more. Right.
But certainly he would still be grieving.
I was messed up for 2 years after my wife died. Yeah.
Exactly. The one thing I have to say is I think almost all TV shows, unless it's central to the plot, do not give justice to how people grieve the loss of a loved one.
Right.
I think I think cop shows are worst at it because you have like a spouse who dies in a violent way, and like it goes beyond shock. They're kind of like, oh no, oh darn.
Well, you might have like one episode.
Right.
One episode, and then the next episode it reboots, and it's something they'll mention once in a while, and maybe you'll have one scene once in a while, but
then they're kind of sad. Yeah, exactly. So I just don't feel like
I miss my wife. I'm going to go shoot a bad guy.
And some of that's understandable because watching people grieving for long periods of time, episode after episode, is not going to attract ratings. It's not going to please the audience.
No.
Right.
But I think they could have done something more here than they did. I mean, a moment of tears for Graham or something, just even without words.
I think there's an opportunity to do that in the next episode coming up, which we can talk about at the end about the next episode. But
there is the sense of shock too. You think about it, where these people have been violently ripped away from everything they've known, and it's been kind of a whirlwind tour from that point. So you could kind of understand that, but like you said though, I mean, it would have been something if at that moment when there's Graham and Ryan talking about it, where you did see a little bit, the eyes tear up and a little bit of a reaction as they're talking about it.
Right. I mean, they are on an alien planet, which I love the Doctor's response. Oh, first alien planet. Don't touch anything.
Welcome.
Welcome. Don't touch anything. I have to say go ahead, Jimmy.
One thing that I wanted to note with the guest cast this time. So we have 3 guest cast members. We have the race master. I mean, the guy running the race.
Yeah.
And then we have the 2 competitors in the race. And the guy who's in control of the race is pretty unsympathetic. He only appears in 2 scenes at the beginning and the end. There's not a lot to him. Right. Where the more psychological character interest is in the 2 competitors. And they set us up with the male competitor is unsympathetic, whereas the female competitor is sympathetic. And so we've got, okay, playing into classic PC tropes here. If we're going to do this, it's going to be the man who's the unsympathetic one. It's going to be the woman who's the sympathetic one. So that was a little disappointing. But I said to myself,
I had a feeling that what would happen is that by the end of the episode, that they would undermine that, like reverse it.
Right.
But
and
they
that's
didn't.
what I would. Well, I think they did a little bit. I think I said they're going to do something more interesting here, because the way they've set this up, they put the audience in the position of rooting for the woman to win. Right. That's what they want the audience to be thinking, is we want this woman to win. We want the man to lose. And I said, but that's too lazy. That's they're going to do something to undermine that. And eventually they did. They had the man make the interesting point at the end that, hey, it was my cigar that saved everybody.
Right.
And that, even though he's still the less likable of the two, we were able to get to a point where they proposed the joint winner status, and they both committed to that, and they both found an element of redemption there. They might have been able to play things a little more subtly than they did, but at least they didn't go with the ham-fisted good woman wins, bad man loses.
That's true.
Thing that they could have done. Also,
by the way, how bad is it an idea to have a snap-activated cigar?
I know.
That was my thought too. Was like that just sounds like a horrible idea.
Yeah, got one of those in your pocket. Someone says, "Oh, we're going to get through this just like that," and your pocket catches on fire.
Well, it's about as bad as having a snap-activated hole in your head. So,
right.
The one thing I did think, I was surprised when because again, and this is true of the BBC. There's such a tobacco phobia these days.
Yeah.
And they've basically eliminated smoking on screen outside of very limited circumstances, especially in a program like this. When the one exception they made that was notable was for Winston Churchill. They had Winston Churchill on the show, they let him smoke a cigar. When they had Vincent van Gogh on the show, he didn't smoke his pipe, although just at the end, as he was turning away, we saw him holding it. But other than that, there's been like no tobacco in the show. And I was surprised that they made such a big deal out of the cigar and then handled it, and they integrated it to the plot and then handled it in a relatively moderate way. We didn't get a big anti-tobacco sermon. All we got in that regard was, I hear it's bad for your health. Or it's bad for your health. One line. And other than that, it wasn't a big deal. And I thought, I'm not a fan of cigars personally. The tobacco they make them out of, I don't think smells attractive. But or nice. But I was pleased that we didn't get a big sermon on that. And also, it's just a little bit interesting that the doctor saved the day by lighting a cigar.
I think one of the reasons that it got through was because no one actually smokes the cigar. No one's actually seen smoking it, and that it was the unsympathetic figure who had it. So I think
it played into that.
Yeah.
For the record, by the way, the doctor used to smoke a pipe back in the first doctor's time. We saw him lighting his pipe once.
Right.
The one thing, even though it's a concession to modern sensibilities where they say it's bad for your health, that wouldn't necessarily apply at all to space cigars. They might have a medicinal healing effect for all we know.
Or to aliens, because, of course, both Angstrom and Epso, both, when asked, when told that the group, that the companions are from Earth, they're humans from Earth, they're like, what are humans? What's Earth?
Yeah, we don't know what Uman beans are.
Right. Yeah. One's an Albarian and one's a Muxterran. So is it bad for them? Who knows? I mean, and who knows that even the cigar is actually tobacco, as you said. So it's and
again, there's the sense of moderation. It's very different to smoke, say, a cigar a week than it is to smoke 3 packs a day.
Hey, if you win a race, in which 3,999 of your competitors are knocked out and you win.
And you win enough money that you're set for life.
Yeah. You can smoke a cigarette. So the being a race that is at the heart of this, the show does move very quick. I got to say that the energy and pacing is, I wouldn't say it's relentless, because there are moments to stop and recollect and to kind of have conversations, but the pacing was good throughout it. It was, I thought it was exciting in parts, and I enjoyed that. One question I had is, they're not in the future, right? They're just displaced in space.
That's unclear.
I would assume it's just displaced in like you said, in location, not time.
Because she was using the Stenza relocation device
to go to another planet, but not another time to find the TARDIS.
Right. So that's what I kind of, that was my initial question. Then I was, because these not humans look a lot human, so sometimes we see the humans that have gone out in space in other episodes. So we get that.
Yeah, it's not clear, but I think the preponderance of evidence points to this being just far out in the present.
Like, halfway across the universe or something like that,
So one of the things I liked is this continuation of the new Doctor personality, where she doesn't know everything, but she's very smart. And sometimes she doesn't even know what's really going on. Like when she first wakes up on this spaceship, she doesn't know what's going on, where she is, why she's not on a planet with the TARDIS. But she is very smart and comes up with solutions. And I like that. We've talked about this before, the whole Doctor astride the universe, omnipotent and omniscient, versus the Doctor. To me, she reminds me a lot of what I've seen of Peter Davison.
Yeah, she reminds me a lot of Peter Davison too. Not the same, but and she's perkier and quirkier, but she has a lot of the same humility and vulnerability and limitations that Peter Davison has. And he was one of my favorite Doctors for just that reason. Right.
Yeah. And she continues to sort of apologize. I hope that doesn't become like overdone, the apologies. But by the end of this, when she thinks that they've lost the TARDIS forever and they're now stuck on this planet, I mean, she nearly despairs, and it's the companions who have to buck her up.
I thought this was weak writing. When they get there and they see the TARDIS is not there, they've been told it materializes every so often, every however 1,000 cycles or something, and they don't know what a cycle is. That's never been established. So that could be every 1,000 minutes. If I was the Doctor and I was there, even if I thought a cycle could be a year and we're going to be dead long before that, I would keep everybody's morale up instead of instantly despairing in front of everybody. I'd say, okay, it's not here right now. We need to wait for it. Maybe there's a way we can find to speed it up. Let me use my sonic screwdriver. Because then she does to help it home in. The solution they provide where the Doctor is despairing, and I don't mind, I actually like the idea of them showing us the Doctor despairing, and I don't mind the idea of the companions being the ones to supply hope. I just think they did it ham-fisted here because they haven't provided an adequate basis for her despair. And so consequently it felt like a cheat. And then they gave us a Deus Ex Machina resolution to the despair in like 30 seconds. Where it's like, come on, you haven't set up or paid off the despair in a believable way. Right.
Yeah, that was a little, you're right. It was a little bit of a ham-fisted writing of that. It was too much too quick and then resolved too quick. So we get a question that, like, I feel like Chibnall at times anticipates the fan question, the fan objection. How are they talking to these aliens without the TARDIS being there? Oh, well, if the TARDIS, if the TARDIS isn't there, we have the metapods implanted.
Got a little babelfish stuck in the back of your spine.
I love Graham's reaction to that. It's like, can people stop sticking things in me without asking first?
That's so great. I feel like Graham is now the the 12th Doctor's snark and like cranky old man for the group. But so we're not going to lose that bit of kind of humor a bit. So we encounter this guy Ilan. He is he's chilling in the tent. You see what I did there? He's the
saw it.
Originator of the was it Rally of the 12 Galaxies? Sounds like an epic race. And this is the last one. Of course, they show up this, and he says, "The rally is a test of survival. How far will we go? How will we react when challenged? It's the ultimate test." And of course, it sort of lays out this idea of, okay, so we're going to see how do people react under pressure. That's the sort of the theme of the show, of this episode. So then we get another nice nod back to classic Who with the Doctor takes down Epso, who's got his gun on Angstrom, with a little Venusian Aikido.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is very nice.
And it was so that's a third Doctor reference for people who may not be familiar. John Pertwee was known for using Venusian Aikido. They recently re-referenced it with Peter Capaldi's Doctor. And so this was a nice, tie-in to the old show to honor its heritage. And they advanced it a little bit because now the Doctor tells us that Venusian Aikido was invented by Venusian nuns. So
Yes.
as a pacifist martial art.
I want to see that order of nuns. I bet they're cool. Early on, I noticed they kept showing these scraps of fabric everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Did that stand out to you as we're setting something up?
See, for me, I first thought it was they're showing that this is remnants of the people that were there, and people had died there. This was all that was left of them. But of course, they go further than that. But that was kind of what I was thinking, though. It's kind of like the stereotypical Western scene where you see the cow skull with the turkey vulture sitting on top of it. That's what I was thinking. It was kind of like.
Where I first really took note of them was where Cigar Guy goes to have a lie down, and one of them starts to cover him, and they show it starting to levitate up over him in a menacing way. And I thought they were going to do something creative there, like it's an auto blanket. You lay down and it lays over you just to be, because that's its function, to be nice, keep you warm. But no, it turned out to be a monster. But once it was a monster, I thought it was an effective monster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we'll talk a bit about more about that in a second, because I want to deal with what that comes up because of that. Yeah. But I thought that as soon as I saw like the first couple of times that they framed a shot where this fabric or what have you, these scraps were framed in the foreground, I said these are going to be significant. But Father Cry, I thought it would be something like that's going to somehow come out that these are the bodies or some remnant of the original settlers. I didn't anticipate that they would actually be deadly, but they tell us everything on this planet is trying to kill you. So.
I thought they were a little slow on the uptake of like weapons research disaster, because the Doctor's like, why can't I find something that explains this planet? And I'm going, weapons research disaster. Come on.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Microbes in the water, poison in the air, robotic guards. This all spells weapons research disaster.
Exactly. Yeah. The weapons killing their designers.
Yeah. By the way, her line, why would you leave robot guards on a planet? Maybe because there's something on the planet you want guarded in your absence?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Right.
It's not that hard to figure out.
So some nice character moments on this solar powered boat that they're taking across the water. It was an interesting plot device to put them all together on this boat, even though it's a race. One thing I noticed is
I like Graham's and Ryan's contributions to fixing it too.
Yep.
Yes,
and
together.
The tri-solar battery is a nice thing as well.
By the way, I looked up MVP. I'm sure that all of our British listeners knew right away what it was, but MVP is a sort of occupational specialty certification that you can get certifications in different areas. Everything from, a secretary can get certified at different levels, but also, mechanics and all kinds of occupational specialties.
So it's a way of unions reinforcing their dominance and keeping non-licensed people off the market. Like here in America, where in some places you have to have 1,000 hours of training to wash people's hair.
Yeah.
Okay. I will not get into the politics of that. So we're not going to be discussing politics.
Okay.
As much as I want to. But one of the things I noticed is that Graham keeps waking up Ryan in this episode. Did you notice that?
Mhm.
We get a first-person viewpoint from Ryan of Graham. Ryan, wake up. So at the very beginning, and then I'll get on the boat. I think what they're trying to do is to reinforce this, the elements of this relationship between the two of them.
Yeah,
right. We get that kind of reminds.
Graham is taking the initiative in reaching out to Ryan, and it would be entirely possible at this point in their relationship, given that they're not blood relations and that he's a second deputy grandfather, for them to just part ways and never see each other again.
Right.
And Graham and that frankly is kind of what we get the vibe that Ryan would like to have happen.
Right.
But Graham is the one who's reaching out and taking the initiative to build a stronger bond with his adoptive grandson.
Right. And in fact, I feel like at this point, after 2 episodes, we've got a pretty solid character foundation and backstory for Graham and Ryan. I mean, we know a lot about both of them, but what we don't have
about Yaz.
Exactly. The only thing we know about Yaz at this point is she's a cop. She went to school with Ryan, and what she says in this episode about how her dad is kind of bossy or domineering, and her sister wants her to move out so she can have her room. And that's really kind of all we have about Yaz. Again, I mentioned that there's a future episode where they go to Punjab, where we're apparently going to get...
Her family may be from.
Yeah, there's going to be some connection to her in that episode of her background. So that would be nice, because I feel like I want to learn more about Yaz as well. It's the danger of having 3 companions. So yeah, we get these sniper bots, and there's this moment where Ryan has had it with running away, and he's decided, well, I'm going to pick up this gun and chase after the sniper bots, and then of course he shoots them all down, and then they all reset and pop up. You know what I think it reminded me of was the scene from Star Wars where Han and Chewie chase the stormtroopers down around the corner, and then turn around and has to run back. It was sort of the same thing.
I admit, though, I completely facepalmed when at this scene, though, because he goes, I've been preparing for this my whole life. Call of Duty. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Anybody who has ever actually handled a real weapon knows that Call of Duty is absolutely nothing like real life.
Well, in one sense, that's the thing.
It was a fun scene, but it was just like,
Well, but don't they prove it, though? Like, you've played video games, but that doesn't prepare you to fight sniper bots on an alien planet.
Having accuracy with an unknown weapon you've never fired before, you know nothing about how this thing works, and all of a sudden you're point blanking them perfectly. Perfect shots, bam, 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 4 perfect shots in a row. That's not that don't happen. Sorry.
I facepalmed for a different reason, because I could see what was coming. The doctor has just told him not to use guns, and he defies her and uses guns. And so it's like, okay, we're about to get a PC lesson here.
Yep.
And we did. And then when he comes back, he tells her to not go on about guns. And she says, I will go on about it a lot. And I thought, ooh, how 6 Doctor break the fourth wall of you, stick it to the audience.
But to be fair, isn't the Doctor's antipathy toward guns fairly long-standing? I know it doesn't go way back.
It's a creation of, the Doctor has used different tactics at different times. He's generally avoided guns, but he's been open to using them. His whole 3rd incarnation, he was teamed up with a military institution that was flying bullets at everything.
Right.
Even if he chastened him a little bit. And then in his 5th incarnation, he picks up a blaster and puts it directly up against the chest of a Cyberman and fires repeatedly until the Cyberman is dead. And so they've ramped up the gun rhetoric in recent times to abnormal proportions for Doctor Who.
And there's the whole line. There's a whole line in this episode where it's, I'm going to defeat them with intelligence instead of weapons. And you can't outthink a bullet. Why not? I've done it my whole life.
Yeah.
Well, but the Doctor has also used weapons.
Yes.
Most of his/her life. So.
Yeah.
Right.
It's it's not plausible and it's not believable, frankly, because there's a reason people create weapons, and that's because there are times when they're needed.
Okay.
But I will say
fair.
they've yanked it back from the level thus far. They've yanked it back from the level they were under Peter Capaldi, where he was like totally dissing any kind of soldier at all, including Danny Pink.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He was, the antipathy toward anyone who was involved with, as part of their work, weapons was over the top with that one.
The only other bit, and this is the last PC thing I'll take note of in this episode, and I don't want to make it sound like there's a ton of PC stuff here, because there's not. I really appreciate the fact they've toned it down, because it was at proportions
bad
before.
For a while,
yeah. But the only other thing is there's a moment where Graham says, after they learn that the people who used to own this planet were the Stenza, Graham says, "My wife died because of them," and then female likable lady says, "Mine too."
Yep.
So she was apparently in a gay marriage, and it's just one line. It's there, but it is there.
Right. It's very consciously put there. So we find out that the Stenza were kidnapping scientists and forcing them to create weapons of all kinds that now fill the planet and make it a deadly place. So it's interesting to see that we now have the Stenza 2 consecutive episodes. So we were told ahead of time, before the season began, that we would not see classic Who villains. We'd have new ones,
right?
At least in this first season. So apparently the Stenza are going to be a recurring villain here.
Right. Now, some people took it further and said we're not going to have a season story arc. And when I looked at that, it looked to me like that's not exactly what was being said by the showrunners.
Right.
It was an inference. And I think that this episode provides 2 significant pieces of data against that. The first is the Stenza, because in the first episode, we have the doctor saying, if I don't do something to stop you, you're just going to keep doing this. And that's a promise to the audience that at some point she's going to stop them. And it wasn't in this episode. And then to have the Stenza show up again in this episode, even though they're not on screen, is another indication they're going to be a recurring villain. At some point, the doctor will stop them from doing what they're doing. And we may have a rematch with Tim Shaw. Also, I suspect, based on the titles they gave us for the upcoming episodes, and I don't have them, I think it's like episode 5, the something or other conundrum.
The Sarunga conundrum. Yeah.
Sarunga. Yeah. I suspect that episode also may feature the Stenza in some way, because it's the initial word. What is it again, Dom?
Sarunga. Or Saranga.
Yeah. It starts with a couple of phonemes that are similar to the ones used at the front of Tim Shaw's name, Sim Shah. And so I suspect we may get them there as well. The other thing that
could I address the first bit, which is that actually there was an explicit comment by one of the executive producers who explicitly said, and this is a quote, "I'd say the only series arc is the growing relationship between the Doctor and her new friends and how that team builds across the series. In terms of a story arc, there's a few little treats in there if you watch every episode. There's a few little things, but no, mainly it's standalone. The serial, if you like, is the growing relationship between the companions."
And who was it that said that?
That was Matt Strevens.
Right.
And then Chibnall said, it's 10 standalone episodes. There's no 2-parters or anything like that, which that is...
So neither one of those is that different than what we've been having in terms of Doctor Who story arcs, where we have little tidbits that if you watch all the episodes carefully, you see we're going somewhere and then they pay it off at the end.
Right.
But it's not an ongoing, 10-part story.
Because I know you're going to bring it up here in a minute there, Jimmy, but there's something that was brought up as kind of a throwaway line, but that I think could be a hint to what they're doing. The timeless child.
Yes, that's exactly
so let's talk
what I was
about
going to say.
That's like
so when the killer bed sheets are floating up in the air, reading everybody's mind, which is probably a sentence that has never been uttered before in human history. They look in the Doctor's mind and they say, "You're afraid for yourself and others. And they don't say the others. They just say others. And then they pay that off. So they've established a 2-part fear on the doctor's part, herself and others. And then they say, you're afraid of your own newness. So that's her fear for herself. And, but we see farther back. So this is going to pertain to the others she's also afraid of. And they refer to what she's hiding even from herself, the timeless child, the outcast, abandoned and unknown. And to me, that screams Susan. Susan is the timeless child that was outcast. The doctor shut her out of the TARDIS in her last appearance. He abandoned her in 22nd century Earth, and her fate is consequently unknown to the doctor. So I think they're telling us that they're going somewhere with Susan. That's my best estimate on that one.
So, but of course they say, we see what's hidden even from yourself. Is Susan hidden from herself?
Yeah, I think the doctor has, I mean, in a couple of respects, the doctor left Susan and therefore, in a literal sense, hid her from herself or himself at the time. And so she doesn't have knowledge on screen of what's been happening with Susan. So and it's due to her own volition or his own volition at the time. And subsequently, also, you can say, well, she also may be deliberately repressing, thoughts about Susan.
Well, another way that Susan could be hidden from the doctor is that Susan has regenerated. And my guess, here's my guess. If Susan shows up again, Susan will not be a woman. It will be a man. Susan will have regenerated into opposite gender.
That would be possible. That would be a little on the nose, given all the other gender reversing we've been doing. One thing that I hope they make room, I would love to see Carol Ann Ford come back in the role, because Carol Ann Ford is still alive. She's still active. And she's actually done a bunch as Susan for Big Finish. Susan's had some dramatic developments in her life. And they've explored that on Big Finish with the 8th Doctor, who, even though he's a much younger man, she continues to call grandfather. And I would like them to find a way to both bring back Susan and, drop a line that allows the Big Finish stuff to remain canonical, whatever they want to do with Susan from this point.
I think that's going to be an interesting thing with Chris Chibnall, because it was obvious Stephen Moffat was open to canonizing, keeping Big Finish or calling Big Finish canonical. It'll be interesting to see if Chris Chibnall has that same desire.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if he is, I think he's a fan of Doctor Who, and I think that's why he took the job, but I don't know if he's quite the level that Stephen Moffat is.
Yeah, he's signaled he wants to do newness in a way that Stephen Moffat was totally into oldness. So he's definitely going in a different direction. But he's surprising me in throwing in some references like the Venusian Aikido that he didn't have to do. That was there to please the longtime fans, and so are the opening credits.
So there's other possibilities for who the timeless child could be there, and I've been looking around and seen what some of them are, and some of the better ones are the Doctor herself, in some way, maybe a previously unknown regeneration. There's been speculation that in fact, there's been hinting, they said, that the Doctor has had a series of regenerations before the current, or the most recent 12, because now we're in our third set. Admittedly, a remote possibility.
The only basis I'm aware of for that, other than maybe an occasional, ambiguous line, is in a 4th Doctor episode called The Brain of Morbius. The Doctor, Tom Baker's Doctor, got into a battle with the evil Time Lord scientist Morbius, and it was a kind of a telepathic battle mediated through a machine, and we saw the faces of previous Doctors on the machine's display, and we saw a bunch of faces we'd never seen before. And the production crew has confirmed that and they wanted famous actors to play them, but they couldn't get famous actors, so they just used members of the production team. And they've confirmed that their understanding at the time was that those were previous incarnations of the Doctor. But subsequent developments have seemed to establish that William Hartnell was the first, except for what's known as I'm blanking on the name, but it's the something master plan, the Cartmel master plan. Andrew Cartmel was a script editor they brought in during Sylvester McCoy's Seventh Doctor's time, and he developed a big backstory for the Doctor that made him into a mythological Time Lord figure. Originally on screen, we've learned about Rassilon and Omega, or Omega, as they say. And Cartmel's idea was that there was another primordial Time Lord figure called the Other, and that the three of them were the basic founders of Time Lord society. And the Doctor was essentially a continuation of the Other. And that later got explored in a novel called Lungbarrow, but never made it on screen.
And they did hint at that on screen, with
that there was something big about him. In like the 25th anniversary, lady, whatever her name is, the witch, the sorceress, looks into the Doctor's mind and says, "You're way more than an ordinary Time Lord. They don't even know what you are."
So another possibility is that it's the Master. Although the thing that mitigates against that is that Chibnall has said that the Master is not going to be in this series, this season.
Right.
So that probably wouldn't be. Although I have to tell you, I would pay good money to see Missy and this Doctor on screen together. That would be awesome. So we talked about
Big Finish has announced Michelle Gomez in a new series of Missy plays. So those are coming
that could
out.
be fun. That could
awesome.
be fun.
Michelle Gomez is great. And then the other option would be another relative of the Doctor who's not Susan, that we don't know about, especially given that reference in the previous episode that the Doctor has no family, which is interesting given that you mentioned Susan is out there somewhere. So maybe that is a hint that the Doctor's going to be surprised by that, and that Susan is hidden from her. Or, of course, could be someone else entirely. So those are the various options. So we get to the end, and this, we don't have to go through every single obstacle they overcome. It's the standard quest obstacles that you have to get through. I did notice that Ryan says, "Why is it always ladders?" Like talking about going up and down ladders, because he's got his dyspraxia, and climbing ladders is tough for him. So she gets to the end. We talked about it. She despairs. The TARDIS shows up.
Also, that provides another moment of the Doctor being mothering towards one of the companions, which is new, where she like talks him up and builds up his confidence so he can go up the ladder.
Yes. Yep. So when the TARDIS shows up again, I like the fact she says, "Come to daddy. I mean, mommy," or whatever.
That was funny. Yeah.
Like she's still trying to get it straight in her head. So now let's talk about it. The new TARDIS. What do you think?
Outside.
Yep. The St. John's Ambulance logo that's been on there throughout all of Moffat's era is now gone again.
Right.
Notice that. It's got more of a greenish blue tint, blue-green tint. I noticed that.
Yep.
So so that's the exterior. That's not too much to talk. Not too much there. I did notice how the Doctor kind of talked to the TARDIS, as a being, as we've seen in The Doctor's Wife, and because she lost the key, the TARDIS opens the door for her.
Right. And that's consistent with going back to Matt Smith, where David Tennant, where the 10th Doctor learned he could snap his fingers and either light a cigar or open the TARDIS's doors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Don't carry cigars with you when you're around the Doctor. So let's talk about the interior. So
I want to point out before we talk about the interior, I did like the little twist that they did when the Doctor walked in.
Yeah.
You've redecorated. I like it.
Yeah.
Of course, traditionally the Doctor always said, "You've redecorated. I don't like it."
Yeah.
But that being said, I think we're going to be in agreement here.
Yeah. She said,
"We don't
really
like
like it." Yeah. I very much more agreed with Patrick Troughton's second Doctor's assessment of the third Doctor's TARDIS. "Ooh, you've done up the TARDIS. I don't like it." Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like the crystals. I don't like the continuing orange color scheme that we've had ever since the series relaunched. It feels cramped. We have another weird console that doesn't look science fiction-y.
We're back to a junkyard, what I'm calling a junkyard console.
Yeah.
So I have to say,
dark.
so I'm not. Yeah, it is very dark. That was kind of an odd choice. The crystals don't make any sense to me. They don't look like anything we've seen before from any TARDIS. I'm with you, Jimmy. When you said a few episodes ago, why can't we just go back to a regular science fiction-y console room and leave it instead of changing it constantly? It was good enough for the first 25 years of the series, the TV series. What's wrong with leaving it just the way it was? It's fine. Or update it, but leave it.
Can the doctor go to Home Depot and buy some lights for the TARDIS?
Yeah.
Please, well, just some basic spotlights. They're not that expensive. I think the doctor could probably afford them.
Yeah. So, they have a hint at the roundels. The pattern is there. A couple of things. One thing I thought was kind of interesting was how the police box is now it's not just a door and you're in the TARDIS. It's the box is kind of tacked on it completely to the front, which is an interesting choice.
I had a note. I did like that. That's the one aspect of the interior design I did like. That makes a lot of sense. They should have done that before. That's a great solution.
There's two things I like too.
Okay.
There's the second thing I like. Go ahead about that.
Well, I was going to say, I also like the fact that they had the doctor being the one surprised at the interior for once. And I like the fact that none of the companions said it's bigger on the inside. That was a nice subversion of expectations. They did talk about the fact it's bigger on the inside, but they didn't do the formulaic way of someone saying it.
Right. So the other part of the new TARDIS that I like is the custard cream dispenser in the console. The cookie, the foot pedal opens up the thing and you get the cookie. So apparently the doctor has moved on from Jammy Dodgers and she loves custard cream biscuits instead. So
how do you know it was a custard cream biscuit? I thought
it looked like a digestive, but
yeah. Oh, if you look on Twitter, all of our British friends,
which model it is or which version it is. And
yes, all of our British friends who are Doctor Who fans have all immediately recognized the Doctor eating a custard cream biscuit. So
now that being said, I'm waiting for, and I'm sure it's going to be coming out here soon, that little light up spinny TARDIS that was on the console.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be available to purchase here very soon. And actually, I kind of want one. Looked kind of cool.
I want one now. I mean, as a part of the console, I don't know, but it's as a toy.
It's something to sit on my desk and hit a button and it sits there and lights up and spins and maybe even makes the noise.
As a Christmas tree ornament, it's fine. I thought it was too on the nose to be on the console.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So that's the episode itself. I'd like to talk a bit about what we got coming up, but any more notes or thoughts that we didn't cover about the episode itself that you'd like to bring up, Jimmy?
No, I thought it was an okay episode. I thought despite the pace, I thought for me it dragged a little bit in parts. And I didn't like it as much as the first episode. But it was okay. I didn't view it as an intrinsically bad episode. It had a lot of little bits I liked. It had a few bits I didn't like, but I did like the fact it also continued a more realistic feel than what we've had in recent times from Doctor Who, and I think the on-location shooting helped with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Father Corey?
I think pretty much talked everything I had to say about it. I just I had such a hard time because it felt so draggy at times. I mean, there were parts that weren't, and just the kind of where it felt again, like, they just took Hunger Games and kind of changed things a little bit. I admit, I didn't know that's because it's a common trope, but still.
Okay. I liked it. I didn't feel like it dragged too much for me. I saw some people say online that they were bored halfway through. That's certainly not my experience of it. I really liked the one thing I didn't mention was I really liked the whole spaceship crashing bit. That was fun. As they're running away from the crashing spaceship. So that was a lot of fun. But overall,
I think that's part of the issue for a lot of people who thought it dragged was it did have a very fast paced, tense opening with everybody getting caught on the spaceships and we've got to hit the ground running and solve these problems. And that was very engaging. And then the momentum kind of reset once they're on the planet, and there's a lot more exposition and things are happening a lot slower. And I think that's for me where it started to drag. And then I thought, I really hope it picks up by the end.
The part on the boat, as much as I liked them having that conversation, I think the part of the stuff on the boat did take a little long, and there was a little bit extra there that maybe that didn't need to be there, or just made it feel slower, and then a little bit in the tunnel. But I see what people are saying. There were moments where I was thinking, how much longer is left in this? And that's never a good sign when I'm wondering, how much longer is left. Not that I didn't like it, just I lost my attention. So the next time we're going to be doing the episode is called Rosa, and it's the one we've all heard about where they go to the 1950s American South, and they'll meet Rosa Parks. And this is another common Doctor Who trope where they meet a historical figure.
And I like for once that they're not meeting Shakespeare or Charles Dickens or
another British figure, right?
Yeah. And also I like the name of it, given that Rose was the episode that relaunched New Who. Rosa. Yes. If you're going to do a Rosa Parks story, that's the right title for it.
Exactly.
It is. So we probably shouldn't talk too much about what we expect from that. I want to kind of go into that episode fresh, and maybe our listeners. So I want to now do a little bit of feedback. I know we're going a little long, but hey, it's new episodes of Doctor Who. We got to talk about them. But first, from the Woman Who Fell to Earth, a couple of comments. First, from our friend Bennett Gillespie, who is from the UK, who wrote on Facebook. He says, the universal condemnation about knife carrying as PC was very culturally skewed. It came close to advocating breaking the law in the UK. I'm sure that wasn't the intention. I would propose that the episode's message was aimed more at the UK audience and not the twine-cutting 80% populace of Montana, as Reverend Father Corey said. I can see why some sensible people from the USA would bump on the statement. We had a little conversation on Facebook about it, and it was all very cordial.
Yeah.
But the gist... go ahead.
And the three of us, we don't. In fact, we invite contrary opinions. If you have another opinion on something, that's great.
Yes.
So it in this case, it happened that the three of us did bump on the statement. I mean, two of us at least, Father Corey and I, both have rural backgrounds,
right,
where knife carrying is not just tolerated; it's expected. Because they're tools. So, and just coincidentally, all three of us also happen to have kitchens. And so, knives are a part of our lives. But certainly we weren't saying people should break the law. No. I think we're just kind of... we weren't saying it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe change the law, but...
right.
Well, and the fact that it was, it's a Swiss Army knife. Well, maybe not a Swiss Army knife because knives, only idiots carry knives, and it's like, but a Swiss Army knife is not a weapon. It was never designed as a weapon. It was designed as a tool.
Right.
And I think that's where, and I think that's to poke people's eyes.
Yeah.
With.
And I think that's where we, at least Jimmy and I both kind of went, wait a second here. You're not talking about a Bowie knife. You're not talking about a machete. You're talking about a useful tool that people use in their daily lives.
Right.
So,
I mean, from our point of view, I would never tell the UK you have to change your law to allow something that you as British citizens think that should not be allowed in your situation related to your society. That's that's fine. I mean, that we can disagree on that.
Yep.
So I certainly wouldn't. I think from our point of view, it's just kind of we're giving our reaction from our viewpoint where we are, as whether Montana or whether you're from Montana or living in California or as I do live outside of Boston. We're giving our point of view on how we feel about it, and certainly it's not. And it's not intended to be a criticism.
We do welcome other people's views, and you disagree with us, great. Well,
I mean, you're wrong.
Hopefully we can meet up someday and go and discuss this over a couple of pints and
Well,
Knives
Bennett,
are optional.
if you'd like to discuss in person, I will gladly someday fly over to the UK. We can go to a pub and have a nice pint.
Works for me.
And we can debate Doctor Who and everything. I'm happy to do it.
And I think Bennett's comment that this was directed at the UK audience is absolutely right on.
Yes.
My point would be, and Doctor Who has a global audience, and the producers should be thinking about how that's going to play with people in other countries too.
Right. Exactly. All right. So moving on to our to more feedback. We got an email from Kathleen Ross. It was kind of long, so I'm going to kind of just pick out one point that she made that was interesting. She kind of goes back to our review of Face the Raven from last season.
Oh, wow.
She says during that
that's not just last season. That's 2 seasons ago.
Right. That's 2 seasons.
It was 2
right.
seasons,
She's just catching
Long
up.
memory.
Yeah.
Good for her.
I confess I fell over laughing listening to your explanations and possible deeper meanings of retcon. Clearly, you guys haven't seen Torchwood because that is 100% where the retcon reference originated. Retcon is simply the name of an amnesia drug that is frequently used throughout the Torchwood series.
Okay, well, that may be the case on Torchwood, but the term retcon actually has deeper roots than that. It goes back to comic book culture of at least the 1990s, if not the 1980s. In comic books, retconning something is providing an alternative or retroactive explanation of something in continuity. A classic example would be in the X-Men. Originally, Jean Grey was irradiated on a space shuttle and became Phoenix, who then became Dark Phoenix and then died. And then they wanted to bring back the Jean Grey character. But because she had become Dark Phoenix, an evil person, they needed a retroactive way of changing their continuity. And they said, oh, guess what? Jean Grey was never Phoenix at all. She was stuck at the bottom of a bay while this other entity became Phoenix and then Dark Phoenix. That's an example of retconning.
Right. Wikipedia, which has, gives references. The first use of the term retroactive continuity was from a 1973 book, The Theology of Wolfhart Pannenberg. The first known printed use of retroactive continuity referring to the altering of history in a fictional work is in All-Star Squadron number 18 from DC Comics, February 1983.
Yeah.
At some point, retroactive continuity was shortened to retcon. The earliest known reference to that is 1988 on Usenet, the Usenet news groups. So, I don't, you're wrong, Karen. I'm not going to say.
No. I think it's helpful that Karen pointed out that it has this special meaning on Torchwood because I have not watched Torchwood. I've seen a couple of things, but it really wasn't to my taste.
And
so I didn't know that.
What retcon means, it actually, their use of it is kind of a nice,
it's a fun joke.
Point at it, kind of poking at it a little bit by using it as an amnesia drug, the name of an amnesia drug. So actually, I like that.
Yeah.
So some more feedback from this one from Father Brian Hess from the Diocese of Cheyenne, Wyoming, right next door to Father Corey, relatively speaking. On the topic
I think I met him a couple of years ago. So
awesome. So he says on the topic of how to have Jodie Whittaker inherit a role held by a man for 50 years, I thought they did a nice job in that first episode. Like you alluded to, they didn't go the whole "I am the woman doctor, hear me roar" route. And so I thought Whittaker's take on the Doctor was appropriately feminine. In particular, I thought that 1, the way she apologized that her new friends had to see various things, and 2, her complimenting of Ryan for asking good questions showed a feminine attentiveness to people, whereas men tend to be more task-oriented. The new Who Doctors often march forward to defeat the bad guy with minimal regard for the feelings of his companion. Think Matt Smith and Amy on the Byzantium. Amy, I'm scared. Doctor, of course you're scared. You're dying. So far, the new showrunners have struck a nice chord with the first female Doctor. I like that. I like to see a Doctor who not like feminine, like she's like just mincing around, but that she just exhibits the unique traits of a woman in how a woman approaches things and deals with them. I enjoy.
Also, there's a little Peter Davison-like element there too, because he would also care for his companions' feelings in an overt way, but he did it in a more masculine way too. The famous example being him telling Tegan Javanka, "Braveheart, Tegan," which is a more masculine way, but nevertheless, it's like what Jodie Whittaker's Doctor did with Ryan at the ladder.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Just a different nuance to it. And then from our friend Matt from Ithaca, who writes that overall, I quite like The Woman Who Fell to Earth. I think Jodie Whittaker did a terrific job in the role, and so far I'm enjoying her and Chibnall's take on the character of the Doctor. Dynamic, optimistic, slightly disorganized, which is possibly a regeneration side effect, he points out, but not overconfident or overcapable. Here's hoping we're done with the near-omniscient Doctors for a while.
Amen.
I like the character-driven opening, which introduces us to the new companions. Not sure I like friends, quote-unquote, which we talked about before, with great economy. Episodes set entirely at night or in the dark tend to get dreary after a while, but the look of the new series is otherwise fantastic. Well, that kind of solved a little bit of that in this episode.
Yeah.
Ghost Monument. A lot of outside. The actual plot is where things fell down for me a bit. The revelation of what Tim Shaw was really up to was a bit disappointing, and it felt like everything slowed down after that. I've never seen Predator, but that comparison was being made left and right in the fan forums, and I did recognize the concept from a few other shows. I don't necessarily mind recycling, but in this case, it was a letdown. So that's two episodes where there's a bit of an accusation of recycling of story ideas.
I think we're going to have that going forward, especially if you're doing standalone stories.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to avoid, recycling things that have been done elsewhere. There's only a certain number of plots. And
I mean, it can be done well, because you could make that very strong argument that the first episode was basically, Predator retold, but I thought it did a good job of retelling it. So
that's actually the kind of in the ancient world where people would have alternate versions of familiar stories, whether, back then it would be the Atrahasis epic or the Gilgamesh epic or the Iliad or the Odyssey. Before they had their kind of fixed forms, the art of the story was how well is the storyteller going to do it in this performance.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And because every performance was different. And it's kind of like appreciating with the Battlestar Galactica original versus its reboot. Right. It's like, okay, what's different about it and how good are they going to do it this time?
Right. So, and then he just one last thought. He says, you previously asked for feedback on Chibnall's handling of Torchwood. And he said, I've seen all of Torchwood and enjoyed it overall. He says, I bring this up because I could totally see The Woman Who Fell to Earth working as a Torchwood episode if the Doctor were taken out of it. The night setting,
sure.
A rogue alien running around the city acting nasty, the gruesome deaths, and the macabre use of teeth. If we were told tomorrow that the Woman Who Fell to Earth began life as an unused Torchwood script that Chibnall dusted off last year, I'd find it entirely plausible. Interesting.
Fair enough.
So we've got other feedback going on some previous episodes that we just don't have time to get to at the moment. If maybe we can in the future come back to it on some of our previous episodes that we've done, and that's great. But thank you so much, everyone, for sending your feedback and online and in email. We really appreciate it. I think it adds a lot to the show to have your participation. Yes, please keep giving us more feedback. So again, that's it from us. So tell us what you thought of the Ghost Monument and of our discussion. Are we way off base again on some things? I'm sure we are. From others' point of view. So let us know. So and how do you give feedback? Go to sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and leave us feedback on the posting for this particular show, or send us an email to doctorwho@sqpn.com. You can find links to all of our personal social media and websites on our show notes on sqpn.com. We'll be back, like I said, next time when we'll be discussing next week's episode called Rosa. Until then, Jimmy Aiken, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Corey Stika, thank you as well.
Glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest, and remember, I'm really good in a tight spot. At least I have been historically. I'm sure I still am.
Right. This is going to be fun.
This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.